The businessman laughed cruelly, not knowing he was challenging the wrong person. The sound of crystal exploding across the ballroom cut through the air like a blade. Isabella Torres felt every stare boring into her soul as 6 glasses of Moet et Chandon champagne shattered on the Italian marble, creating a golden river that spread toward the designer shoes of the guests. "Incompetent!" David Mitchell's voice echoed through the 18th floor of Mitchell Tower, brutally interrupting negotiations worth $15 million with German investors. 4 years working here, and you still manage to be a walking disaster. The penthouse was decorated like a palace for the most exclusive New Year's Eve party in New York City. 300 businessmen, politicians, and socialites were drinking $2,000 a bottle champagne while closing deals that would move billions in 2025. Isabella remained paralyzed in the center of the massacre, holding the empty tray that had cost $4,200 in French crystal. Her faded gray uniform brutally contrasted with the Chanel dresses and Tom Ford tuxedos around her. For 4 years, she had cleaned those offices invisible as a ghost, careful never to disturb the important people. "Mr. Mitchell, I apologize," she whispered, kneeling to collect the sharp fragments. "My heel got caught in the carpet and—" "Got caught?" David exploded, his voice dominating the entire ballroom. "You want me to believe you can't even walk in shoes?" The laughter began as venomous whispers, spreading like a virus among the groups. Executives pointed discreetly. Women covered their mouths, feigning surprise. David realized he had gained an audience and decided to turn the situation into his personal humiliation show. "Attention, everyone," he shouted, tapping a spoon on his glass. "Let's all thank our super-efficient cleaning crew." The silence that followed was worse than 1,000 laughs. 300 pairs of eyes stabbed into Isabella like daggers, watching every movement as she collected fragments with trembling hand. "David, for God's sake," murmured Patricia Williams, a magistrate's wife. The girl already apologized. "Apologized?" David laughed with calculated cruelty. "Patricia, you don't understand how the real world works. Without consequences, these people never learn responsibility." Dr. Richard Stone, owner of the largest private clinic network in the state, approached with a sadistic smile. "David, you should deduct the damages from her salary. I bet that's 4 months of work." 3 months, David corrected, looking at Isabella with absolute disgust. "The champagne cost $4,200. Her salary is $400 a month." The information spread through the ballroom like gunpowder. Executives made malicious calculations, commenting on how impossible it was to find competent people for basic jobs. Each word was a stab in Isabella's heart, but she continued collecting fragments in silence, praying for the torture to end. That's when David walked to the sound system. The first chords of Por una cabeza echoed through the ballroom, the tango immortalized in Hollywood films. It was David's favorite song, the one he always played when he wanted to impress guests with his supposed cultural sophistication. "Since we're talking about competence," he announced, strategically turning up the volume, "how about a little social experiment?" Isabella raised her head, feeling her heart race. There was something in David's tone that promised even greater humiliation. He walked toward her with theatrical steps, like an emperor about to decree a public execution. "This is one of the most beautiful artistic expressions of humanity," he declared to the fascinated audience. "Argentine tango, music for refined, educated people who understand high culture." He stopped directly in front of Isabella, forcing her to raise her gaze. The difference between them was striking. David, at 6'2", wearing a $20,000 suit and a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. She, at 5'5", in a patched uniform and shoes that had been resold 5 times. I'm going to make an irrefutable proposal to our talented employee, David announced, spinning theatrically to face the guests. If this woman can dance this tango in a minimally decent way, the pause was calculated, savored like fine wine. I will marry her right here and now. The explosion of laughter was deafening. 300 people burst into hysterical laughter, sarcastic applause, shouts of, accept it, as if it were a grotesque reality show. Cell phones appeared instantly, recording what promised to be the most viral video on New York's social media. Imagine the headline, David continued, feeding the circus of horrors. David Mitchell, billionaire CEO, marries cleaning lady who breaks expensive crystal. The laughter intensified. Amanda Peterson, heiress to an oil dynasty, screamed between tears of laughter. David, you've lost your mind. She can barely hold a tray. Exactly, he replied, showing off for the audience thirsty for cruel entertainment. Look at her. Do you think this woman understands anything about art, refinement, dance? David turned again to Isabella, extending his hand mockingly, like a prince offering charity to a beggar. So, dear, do you accept the challenge? Want to try winning a millionaire husband with your artistic talents? The silence that followed pulsed with poisonous expectation. 300 people waited to see if the cleaning lady would be brave or stupid enough to accept the final massacre, or if she would flee in tears, as David secretly hoped. Isabella remained kneeling for long seconds, breathing deeply while the last crystal fragments cut her palms. When she finally raised her head, something had changed in her eyes. It was no longer the submissive look of a humiliated employee. It was something different, something that made David frown. Mr. Mitchell, she said, standing slowly, are you making this proposal officially, in front of all these witnesses? Of course, he laughed, trying to disguise his confusion at the change in her tone. If you can dance decently, I'll marry you today. And if I dance well? Very well, Isabella asked, her voice gaining a firmness no one expected. The question was strange enough to make David hesitate. Well, dear, you can barely walk without tripping. Let's keep expectations realistic. Answer my question, she insisted, taking a step toward him. If I dance very well, better than you expect, what happens? The ballroom became slightly uncomfortable. Something in Isabella's posture had changed in a subtle but perceptible way. Her shoulders were straighter, her voice firmer, her gaze too direct for a humiliated employee. If you manage to impress me, he said, regaining confidence, then I'll really marry you and give you $40,000 as a gift. $65,000, Isabella countered without hesitation. Or don't you have the courage to really bet on something you consider impossible? The provocation hit David's ego squarely. In front of the elite, being challenged by a cleaning lady was unacceptable. $65,000, he shouted. It's done, but when you embarrass yourself, I want you to apologize on your knees to every person in this ballroom. Deal, Isabella said, and for the first time in 4 years, she smiled. But there was something in that smile that made David swallow hard. She bent down, and to everyone's surprise, began untying her black work shoes. The ballroom watched curiously as she removed them carefully, standing barefoot on the cold marble. What the hell is she doing? Whispered Judge Sarah Collins. Getting ready for the embarrassment of her life, replied Marcus Sullivan, owner of a construction company. But some people noticed that Isabella's posture had changed when she removed her shoes. Her feet positioned themselves in a specific way. Her arms relaxed peculiarly, as if she had just freed herself from shackles. Last chance to give up, David said, now slightly nervous. I don't want you to say later that I didn't warn you about what's going to happen. Isabella ignored him completely, closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and when the first chords of Por una cabeza echoed through the ballroom again, she began to move. And the movements weren't what anyone expected. Her arms rose with a gracefulness that made several people blink in confusion. Her bare feet moved across the marble with a lightness that didn't match the image of a clumsy cleaning lady. Her head tilted to the exact rhythm of the music, as if she really knew what she was doing. And then she began to dance. The ballroom gradually fell silent. The laughter diminished. The whispers stopped. The malicious smiles transformed into expressions of growing confusion. Isabella wasn't just trying to dance. She really knew how to dance. They weren't perfect movements, but they were competent, very competent. Too competent for a cleaning lady who supposedly could barely walk without tripping. She executed basic tango steps with a naturalness that left everyone lost. David felt a growing chill in his stomach. This wasn't going as planned. She should have tripped, embarrassed herself, given up in tears. She shouldn't be actually dancing. The music continued, and Isabella increased the complexity of the movements. Simple turns, but correctly executed. Walks that followed the rhythm perfectly. Facial expressions that truly conveyed the emotion of tango. "Dude," Dr. Richard whispered to David, "she knows how to dance." "That's impossible," David murmured back, sweating cold, but it was real. Everyone watched a cleaning lady dance tango with a competence none of them could explain. It wasn't world-class dancing, but it was good, very good, too good. When the music reached its end, Isabella made a simple but elegant finish, ending in a pose that drew involuntary sighs from the audience. The silence that followed was deafening until someone began to applaud. Slowly, confused, then another. In seconds, the entire ballroom was applauding, but these weren't celebratory applause. They were shocked applause, from people trying to process what they had just seen. Isabella remained in the center of the ballroom, breathing calmly, looking directly into David's terrified eyes. "Well, Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice cutting through the hesitant applause, "looks like I just won $65,000. David was pale, visibly shaken. How do you know how to dance?" "I learned," she replied simply, extending her hand. "The $65,000, please." "But that's not possible. You're a cleaning lady, and cleaning ladies can't know how to dance," Isabella asked, tilting her head. "How interesting, this worldview of yours, Mr. Mitchell." The ballroom was in total silence, everyone processing what had happened. The incompetent cleaning lady had danced better than most guests could, and now was collecting on a bet that David had made with absolute certainty he would never lose. "The $65," she repeated, still extending her hand. 300 witnesses heard the bet. David looked around desperately, but found only expectant faces. He had gotten himself into an impossible situation, victim of his own arrogance. I'll get the money," he stammered, trying to exit dignifiedly from a situation he couldn't comprehend. But questions hammered in the heads of everyone present. How did a cleaning lady know how to dance tango? Where had she learned? Why had she never mentioned it? And most importantly, who really was Isabella Torres? 20 minutes later, the $65,000 was on the marble table, 130 bills of $500 still smelling like the bank. David had returned to the ballroom with a gray face, trembling hands, and his $20,000 suit seeming to have lost all elegance. 300 guests remained at the location, whispering among themselves about what had happened. No one wanted to miss the next chapter of that unexpected drama. Isabella was sitting in an Italian leather armchair, still barefoot, drinking a glass of water that Patricia Williams had offered her. Her gray uniform remained simple and faded, but something had radically changed in how people looked at her. She was no longer the invisible cleaning lady. She was an unknown, a mystery no one could decipher. "Here's your money," David said, pushing the bills toward her with a brusque movement. "Now I want an explanation. How the hell does a cleaning lady know how to dance tango?" The silence in the ballroom was deafening. All conversation ceased. When David asked the question on everyone's mind, Isabella took the money calmly, counted the bills one by one under David's furious gaze, and put them in her uniform pocket. "I learned when I was younger," she replied simply. "Younger where?" Dr. Richard approached, clearly curious. "Where would someone like you learn tango?" The question cut through the air like a blade. "Someone like me," Isabella repeated slowly, letting the words echo. "What exactly do you mean by that, Doctor?" Dr. Richard turned red, realizing the trap he had fallen into. I meant, someone who works as a cleaning lady generally doesn't have access to that type of artistic education." "Ah, I see." Isabella smiled coldly. "You think people who work in cleaning were born to work in cleaning? That they never had other lives, other dreams, other skills?" The embarrassment was visible. Several guests lowered their gaze, recognizing themselves in the prejudiced description she had just exposed. "That's not what I meant to say." Dr. Richard tried to defend himself. "It's exactly what you meant to say." Isabella stood up, walking barefoot through the ballroom with a gracefulness that now made sense. "All of you have seen me for 4 years and assumed I had always been what you see today. A woman in a gray uniform who cleans bathrooms and empties trash cans." She stopped in the center of the ballroom, exactly where she had danced minutes before. "It never occurred to any of you that I might have had a life before working here, that I might have studied, dreamed, achieved things. So tell us," Amanda Peterson said, her voice loaded with skepticism, "what was your life before being a cleaning lady?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Isabella looked around, seeing 300 expectant faces, some curious, others doubtful, all judgmental. "I was a ballerina," she said finally. A collective murmur ran through the ballroom. It wasn't a surprise after what they had seen, but hearing it confirmed still caused impact. "A ballerina where?" David asked, his voice loaded with disdain. "In some cabaret show?" The gratuitous malice of the question made several people uncomfortable, but Isabella wasn't shaken. "At Lincoln Center in New York," she replied calmly. "I studied there from age 7 to 17. Then I moved to Paris, where I specialized at the National Institute of Dance." The ballroom became quieter. Paris was the birthplace of classical ballet worldwide. Studying there meant professional seriousness. "Paris?" Patricia Williams asked, genuinely interested. "That must have cost a fortune." "I earned a full scholarship," Isabella explained. "I was selected from among 800 American candidates. I lived there for 5 years. "And then?" Dr. Richard insisted, now visibly intrigued. Isabella hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Then I returned to America and worked as a professional ballerina for 10 years. I danced in theaters, corporate events, competitions." "Competitions?" Marcus Sullivan approached. "What kind of competitions?" "State championships, national ones," she replied. "I competed internationally a few times." "And you earned well?" Amanda asked with evident malice. "I earned enough to live with dignity doing what I loved," Isabella replied, looking directly into her eyes. David, who had remained silent processing the information, exploded. "This makes no sense at all. If you were a professional ballerina, why are you working as a cleaning lady?" The question everyone wanted to ask had finally been asked. The ballroom fell into absolute silence, waiting for an answer that could explain the mystery. Isabella breathed deeply, as if preparing to open an old wound. "Because life happened," she said simply. "What kind of answer is that?" David pressed. "Either you're lying about being a ballerina, or you're lying about why you stopped." "I don't lie, Mr. Mitchell," Isabella said, her voice gaining a hardness that made some guests step back. "But I also don't owe explanations about my personal life." "You do," he shouted, completely losing composure. "You've worked for me for 4 years. I have the right to know who I'm dealing with." "You have the right to know if I do my job well," Isabella retorted. "And I do." For 4 years I've cleaned your offices, emptied your trash cans, washed your bathrooms, always on time, always well done, always in silence. But hiding who you really are. Hiding? Isabella laughed bitterly. Mr. Mitchell, when was the last time you asked my full name? When was the last time you asked where I came from? If I have family? What I studied? David opened his mouth but couldn't answer. In 4 years, he had never shown the slightest interest in Isabella's personal life. Never, she continued. In 4 years, you never saw me as a human being with history, dreams, past. To you I was always just the cleaning lady, an object that cleans things. The embarrassment in the ballroom was palpable. Many guests recognized they also treated employees the same way. So now that you've discovered I'm more than a gray uniform, Isabella continued, you want to demand explanations you never cared to hear before. Judge Sarah Collins spoke up. Isabella, we don't want to invade your privacy, but you need to understand our curiosity. It's very unusual to see a professional ballerina working as a cleaning lady. Why is it unusual? Isabella asked. Why do you think competence guarantees success? That talent prevents personal tragedies, that qualified people are immune to circumstances that force them to accept jobs they wouldn't choose. The question hung in the air, uncomfortably true. Look around. Isabella gestured to the luxurious ballroom. You live in a bubble where you believe social position reflects ability, that poor people are poor because they're incompetent, and rich people are rich because they're superior. That's not true, isn't it? Amanda smiled ironically. Then why are you all shocked to discover that a cleaning lady knows how to dance? Isabella retorted. Because you automatically assumed I was incompetent based on my uniform? The silence that followed was deafening. No one could deny the accusation because everyone knew it was true. For 4 years, Isabella continued, you've seen me clean these ballrooms during your parties. I passed by you carrying trash, washing glasses, organizing tables, and none of you ever thought, who is this woman? What life did she have before? What dreams does she have? Dr. Richard lowered his head, visibly embarrassed. You're right. I never asked myself that. Because it's easier not to ask, Isabella said. It's more comfortable to assume that people in service positions have always been there, will always be there, and deserve to be there. David, who had become increasingly nervous during the speech, exploded again. Enough of this cheap sociology talk. I want to know why a ballerina became a cleaning lady. What kind of problem do you have? Drug addiction? Alcohol? Gambling debts? The entire ballroom was shocked by the brutality of the question. Several people whispered protests, but Isabella raised her hand, asking for silence. Do you really want to know? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. I do. Then I'll tell you, Isabella said, walking slowly toward David. 6 years ago, I was principal ballerina of the New York City Ballet Company. I earned $15,000 a month. I had my own apartment on the Upper East Side, an imported car, a stable life. The guests paid absolute attention, finally learning the story that would explain everything. I was married to Diego Rodriguez, also a dancer, my dance partner for 12 years. We were considered one of the best tango couples in America. Isabella paused, breathing deeply as if preparing for the most difficult part. In April 2019, we were returning from a performance in Boston when our car was hit by a drunk driver on I-95. The silence in the ballroom became sepulchral. Everyone realized the story wouldn't have a happy ending. Diego died instantly, she continued, her voice beginning to tremble almost imperceptibly. I spent 4 months in the hospital. 7 surgeries on my right leg, 3 on my hip, physical therapy for 2 years. Patricia Williams put her hand to her mouth, genuinely moved. When I left the hospital, I discovered I could no longer dance professionally. My right leg never regained the flexibility and strength necessary for competitions. But you danced today, Dr. Richard observed gently. I dance to survive, Isabella explained. I can execute basic steps, simple movements, but I'll never again be able to do the jumps, turns, and acrobatics that a professional career requires. The revelation fell like a bomb. Suddenly, the performance that had impressed everyone gained new dimension. It wasn't a professional ballerina showing off talent. It was a former ballerina fighting against physical limitations to show the remains of a lost ability. After the accident, she continued, I lost my job with the company. Without Diego, I couldn't afford the apartment payments. I sold everything I had to pay medical debts and moved to a rented room. David was pale, clearly not expecting such a tragic story. I tried giving dance lessons but couldn't demonstrate advanced movements. I tried working in gyms, but my physical limitation hindered me. I tried being a choreographer, but the market was saturated. And how did you end up here? Judge Collins asked gently. 4 years ago, I was facing real hardship. I couldn't pay rent, barely had money for food. I saw an advertisement from the outsourced cleaning company and applied. She looked directly at David. On the day of the interview, the manager asked if I had any special experience. I said I was a former ballerina. He laughed and said that didn't matter for cleaning bathrooms. The ballroom was in total silence, processing the devastating story. Since then, Isabella concluded, I work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. cleaning offices to pay for a boarding house room and buy basic food. And for 4 years, I was invisible to all of you. The collective guilt was almost physical. 300 people realized they had treated with contempt someone who faced a personal tragedy with absolute dignity. Isabella, Patricia approached with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. We never imagined. You never imagined because you never asked, Isabella said without bitterness, just stating a fact. And now you know why I don't tell my story. Because it becomes entertainment for people with easy lives. David remained silent, visibly shaken. His arrogance had completely evaporated before the brutal reality he had just learned. Mr. Mitchell, Isabella addressed him, do you still think people like me deserve to be humiliated for breaking crystal glasses? He couldn't answer. For the first time in years, David Mitchell was speechless. At that moment, something moved in the heart of each person present. There was a superior force operating there, greater than any coincidence or chance, as if the universe itself had orchestrated that encounter to teach everyone about humility, justice, and the inherent dignity of every human being. 5 days after the party that changed everything, Isabella arrived at work at her usual time, 11 p.m. sharp. But this time, something was different, not just in how she felt, but in how the entire environment had changed around her. The night security guards greeted her by name for the first time in 4 years. The night receptionist smiled genuinely when she passed. Even employees from the other cleaning company looked at her with respect. The story had spread not only among the 300 party guests, but throughout the internet. Videos discreetly recorded during the performance had gone viral on social media with titles like Cleaning Lady Humiliates Millionaire Boss with Perfect Dance, and The Most Elegant Revenge Ever Filmed. In 5 days, the videos had accumulated over 8 million views. Isabella stored her uniform in the locker and put on simple clothes, dark jeans and a white blouse. She was no longer just a cleaning lady fulfilling hours. The $65,000 had changed everything. For the first time in 6 years, she had enough money to make choices. Isabella, a familiar voice echoed through the corridor. It was Joan Stevens, the company's human resources manager, running toward her with an urgent expression. Good thing you arrived. Mr. Mitchell wants to speak with you. Now. Now? Isabella asked, surprised. David never stayed in the office after 7 p.m. He's been here since yesterday, Joan whispered conspiratorially. Hasn't left the office, barely ate anything. Employees are saying he's having some kind of crisis. Isabella followed Joan through the corridors she knew so well. but now walked with her head high, without the submissive posture of the last 4 years. When they reached the main office, they found David sitting behind the solid mahogany desk, surrounded by piles of papers and with a deplorable appearance. He was without a tie, wrinkled shirt, disheveled hair. "Isabella," he said when he saw her enter, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "I need to talk to you." "About what, Mr. Mitchell?" "About everything. About what happened at the party. About what you told me. About—" he hesitated. "About how I treated you all these years." Isabella sat in the chair facing the desk, crossed her legs, and waited. She wasn't going to make anything easy for him. "I haven't been able to sleep properly in the last 5 days," David continued. "I keep thinking about your story, the accident, what you went through, and especially about how I treated you without knowing any of this." "And does that bother you?" Isabella asked directly. "It bothers me a lot," he admitted, "but not just from guilt. It bothers me because it made me realize something about myself that I didn't want to see." "What thing?" David stood up and walked to the window, looking at the nighttime city. "That I'm exactly the type of person I always despised when I was a child." The confession caught Isabella by surprise. It was the first time she saw a glimpse of real vulnerability in David. "My father was a construction worker," he said, still with his back to her. "My mother, a housekeeper. I grew up seeing my mother's bosses treat her like garbage, seeing engineers treat my father like he was stupid." Isabella frowned. She wasn't expecting this revelation. "I swore that when I grew up I'd be different, that I'd respect whoever worked for me, that I'd never treat anyone the way my parents were treated." He turned to face her. "And then you show me that I became exactly like those jerks who humiliated my family." "Mr. Mitchell," Isabella said calmly, "recognizing this is a first step, but recognizing doesn't erase 4 years of humiliation." "I know." He returned to his chair. "That's why I want to make a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" David took a deep breath. "I want to offer you a real job, not outsourced, not as a cleaning lady, as corporate events coordinator for the company." Isabella almost laughed. "Events coordinator, Mr. Mitchell? This is a construction company." "Exactly. And construction companies need corporate events, public relations, employee activities. You have artistic experience, you understand organization. I clean bathrooms, Mr. Mitchell. I don't organize events, but you can learn, and I can teach you." Isabella studied him carefully. "What would the salary be?" $10,000 a month, with signed contract, health insurance, meal vouchers. It was more than 7 times what she earned as a cleaning lady, but something about the proposal bothered her. "Why are you doing this?" "Guilt," he admitted, "but also because I realized I have a competent employee working in the wrong position for 4 years." "How do you know I'm competent? You've never seen me do anything but cleaning." "I saw you dance," David said simply. "I saw the discipline, technique, dedication that requires. Someone who can reach that level in any area has the competence to learn other things." Isabella remained silent for several minutes, processing the offer. It was tempting, but there was something she needed to clarify. "Mr. Mitchell, I'll be direct. If I accept this proposal, it won't be because I feel sorry for you or because I want to ease your guilty conscience. I know. It will be because I need the money. And if at any moment you try to humiliate me again, I'll leave and expose everything I know about how you treat employees." David swallowed hard. "Understood. And I want an additional condition." "What?" Isabella leaned forward. "I want you to change how you treat all outsourced employees, not just me." "What do you mean?" "I want you to implement an employee respect program, monthly meetings where they can give suggestions, complaints without fear of retaliation. I want you to know the name of every person who works in this building." That's very specific. It's a necessary change. If you really want to redeem yourself, it has to be with everyone, not just me." David hesitated, and it was a proposal that would mess with the entire company culture. And if I don't agree, then I refuse your offer and continue working as a cleaning lady. But now everyone knows who I am. It'll be hard to humiliate me again. It was a smart move. Isabella had gained the bargaining power she didn't have before. Okay, David agreed, but you'll help me implement these changes. I don't know how to do this alone. Deal. Isabella extended her hand, but with one last condition. One more thing. I want to work part-time for 2 weeks. I'll personally train my replacement in cleaning. I won't abandon people who depend on this work. David shook her hand, impressed by the loyalty she demonstrated even being offered something better. 3 months later, the company had changed radically. Outsourced employees now participated in monthly meetings. There was an implemented suggestion program. Turnover had decreased dramatically, and Isabella had become one of the most respected people in the organization. But more importantly, David had become a different person and was beginning to understand that his fascination with Isabella went far beyond professional admiration. It was Friday, late afternoon, when Isabella was in her new office, a small but dignified office on the 15th floor, with a city view and a plaque on the door that read, Corporate Events Coordinator. Isabella, you need to see this. Joan burst into her office, holding a tablet with a panicked expression. It just came out in the New York Post social column. Isabella took the tablet and read the headline that made her blood freeze. Millionaire businessman hires ex-lover as employee of favor after public humiliation. The article, signed by Stella Morrison, a social columnist known for destroying reputations, told a completely distorted version of the facts. According to the text, Isabella was a decadent ex-ballerina who seduced businessman David Mitchell in exchange for a fictitious job at his company. The article insinuated that all the transformation in the company was theater to disguise an extramarital affair, and that Isabella used her feminine charms to extort $65,000 from the millionaire boss. Who leaked this? Isabella asked, feeling anger rise in her throat. We don't know, but there's more. Joan swiped the screen. The article mentions details that only someone who was at the party would know. Someone who was there sold the story to the journalist. Isabella's phone rang. It was David. Isabella, did you see the article? Just read it. Who did this, David? I don't know, but I'll find out. I'm coming to the office now. You don't need to. I can handle this alone. No, you can't. This affects the entire company and mainly affects you. An hour later, when new information arrived, the situation became clear. Amanda Peterson, the oil heiress who had been at the party, had sold the information to the columnist for personal revenge. She had lost a $20 million contract to David's company the previous month. But Isabella wasn't going to accept this passively. She called an emergency meeting with all employees. I want everyone in the auditorium in 30 minutes, she told Joan. An hour later, the company auditorium was packed. Employees from all levels had shown up, many with worried expressions. The article had spread on social media, and everyone already knew about the scandal. Isabella took the stage without any prepared script. She wore a navy blue blouse and black pants, simple but elegant clothes that had become her trademark. When silence was established, she began to speak. I know all of you have read or heard about the article that came out today, she said, her voice echoing through the auditorium. And I know many must be wondering if it's true. A murmur ran through the audience. Isabella raised her hand, asking for silence. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. Not the columnist's version, not the version someone sold to destroy my reputation. The true version. For 20 minutes, she told the whole story. The humiliation at the party, the dance, the bet, her journey as a ballerina, the accident, the 4 years as a cleaning lady. Everything without filters, without softening details, without trying to play victim. The article says I seduced Mr. Mitchell, she continued. The truth is that during 3 months of working together, We never had any kind of personal relationship. He offered me dinner once. I refused. Why did you refuse? Someone shouted from the audience. Because I don't mix personal life with professional life, and because a man who humiliated me for 4 years would have to prove he had truly changed before I'd consider any approach. The brutal honesty silenced the auditorium. The article also says my job is fictitious. She continued, you who work with me know if that's true. In 3 months, we implemented quality-of-life programs, reduced turnover by 45%, created communication channels that never existed. Spontaneous applause began in the audience. Jose, one of the security guards, stood up. Isabella, you changed this company. Anyone who says your work is fictitious is lying. Other employees spoke up. Anna, from cleaning. She taught us we have rights. Carlos, from the warehouse. Because of her, our uniforms were changed for the first time in 5 years. The support was genuine, but Isabella knew a newspaper article could destroy everything quickly. But there's a truth in the article I need to admit, she said, making the auditorium fall silent again. It's true that something changed between me and Mr. Mitchell in recent months. A whisper ran through the audience. It was the first time she had spoken publicly about her relationship with David. He truly changed. Not just lip service, not for convenience. I saw a man recognize his mistakes and work to correct them. I saw someone who had everything and decided to use his power to improve others' lives. She paused, breathing deeply. And yes, I began to feel something for him. Not because of money, not because of position, but because of the man he became. The public confession surprised everyone. Isabella had never spoken about personal feelings. That's when David entered the auditorium. He walked down the center aisle while all eyes turned to him. Climbed onto the stage with a determined expression Isabella couldn't decipher. "Can I speak?" he asked when he reached the microphone. Isabella nodded and stepped aside. "I found out who leaked the story," he said without preamble. "It was Amanda Peterson, who was at the party 3 months ago. She sold the information to the columnist for personal revenge." A murmur of surprise ran through the auditorium. "Amanda lost a $20 million contract to our company last month," he continued. "She decided to get revenge by attacking our reputation through Isabella." David looked directly at Isabella on stage. "But there's something she didn't know when she invented this story. Something that makes her lies irrelevant." He took a small box from his pocket. The auditorium fell into absolute silence. "Isabella Torres," he said, kneeling on stage, "you changed my life in a way I never thought possible. You taught me that true power is in elevating others, not humiliating them. You showed me that respect is earned through actions, not words." Isabella was paralyzed. She wasn't expecting this, especially not in public. "For 3 months, I watched you transform, not just this company, but myself. I saw your strength, your dignity, your ability to forgive without forgetting." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" The auditorium exploded. Employees screamed, applauded, some cried. It was the movie ending no one expected in real life, but Isabella didn't answer immediately. "David," she said into the microphone so everyone could hear, "are you proposing to me to prove a point to the press, or because you really want to marry me?" The brutal question silenced the auditorium again. It was typical of Isabella. Straight to the point, no romanticizing. "I'm proposing because I discovered I can't imagine my life without you," he replied, still kneeling. "Because you made me want to be a better man, and because, if you accept, I want to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve the love of someone like you." Isabella looked at him for long seconds. Then she looked at the audience, employees who had become her family, people who respected and trusted her. "David Mitchell," she said finally, "you humiliated me for 4 years. offered me an opportunity out of guilt, won me over with real changes. She knelt in front of him. And now you're proposing to me in the middle of a tabloid scandal. The auditorium held its breath. The answer is yes. The explosion of joy was deafening. 300 employees stood applauding, screaming, crying. It was more than an engagement. It was the victory of justice, transformation, proof that people can change. When David put the ring on Isabella's finger, she approached the microphone one last time. To the columnist who wrote the article, she said, her voice cutting through the celebration, "Thank you. You gave me the opportunity to publicly clarify that I earned my place here through work, not seduction. And you gave me the chance to gain a fiancé in front of my entire professional family." The auditorium laughed and applauded even louder. And to Amanda Peterson, she continued, "Thank you for showing me that some people prefer to destroy others rather than work to get what they want. You taught me what kind of person I never want to be." 6 months after the proposal in the auditorium, Isabella was in front of the mirror at New York's most exclusive beauty salon, observing a transformation that went far beyond makeup and hairstyling. The woman looking back at her was no longer the invisible cleaning lady, nor the rising employee. She was a radiant bride, about to marry the man who had been her greatest tormentor and had become her greatest love. The dress was a work of art, Italian silk, with delicate embroidery, specially created for her by designer Oscar de la Renta. Simple, elegant, without excess, exactly as Isabella had always dreamed in the times when she still believed in happy endings. "You look too beautiful," whispered Marina Torres, her younger sister, adjusting the veil with tears in her eyes. Diego would be so proud. The mention of her deceased husband made Isabella breathe deeply. There were moments when she still felt guilt for being happy again, for having found love after tragedy. But she had learned that honoring Diego's memory meant living fully, not burying herself in the past. He would be, Isabella agreed, discreetly touching the small bracelet that had been his. "And he'd be happy that I found someone who treats me like he treated me." Outside the salon, movement was intense. St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan was being prepared to receive 500 guests. It wasn't just a wedding. It was an event that had attracted national media attention. The story of the cleaning lady who married the millionaire boss had gone viral internationally, appearing in newspapers in 15 countries. But it wasn't all roses. "Isabella," Joan Stevens entered the salon with a worried expression. "I need to tell you something. Amanda Peterson is trying to cause trouble. She rented a sound truck and is driving around the city with loudspeakers, spreading that the wedding is a publicity stunt." Isabella sighed. Even after 6 months, Amanda was still trying to destroy her happiness. "And there's more," Joan continued hesitantly. She managed to gather a group of protesters to demonstrate at the church entrance. "They're saying you're an opportunist who seduced a rich man." "How many people?" "About 80, but they're making enough noise to disrupt the ceremony." Isabella looked at herself in the mirror. 3 hours until the wedding, and another crisis to resolve. It was as if the universe were testing her determination until the last minute. "Marina," she addressed her sister, "lend me your phone." Isabella dialed a number she knew by heart. "David, it's Isabella. I know about the protests at the church." "Don't worry about it." His voice on the other side was calm and secure. "I'm already handling it." "How?" "My way. Trust me." An hour later, when the wedding procession arrived at the church, the scene at the entrance was surreal. The 80 protesters with signs against Isabella were being confronted by more than 400 people supporting her. Company employees, neighbors from the boarding house where she lived, former colleagues from dance school, ordinary people who had identified with her story. "Isabella, Isabella, Isabella!" the crowd shouted when they saw her get out of the car. Jose, the night security guard, held a giant banner. Thank you for teaching us our dignity." Anna from cleaning had tears in her eyes while shouting, "You deserve all the happiness in the world." It was impossible not to be moved. For years, she had felt invisible, forgotten, worthless. Now hundreds of people had left their Saturday commitments to publicly defend her. "How did you all know?" she asked Jose when she got close. "Mr. I..." David called everyone from the company asking for help. He explained, said he wouldn't let anyone ruin the wedding of the woman who changed all our lives. Amanda Peterson, surrounded by her paid protesters, was visibly frustrated to see that her sabotage attempt had turned into an even bigger demonstration of support for Isabella. "This won't last," she shouted when TV cameras approached. "When he gets tired of her, everyone will see I was right." "Ms. Peterson," a CNN reporter approached her. "Can you explain why you're trying to sabotage the wedding of two people who love each other?" "Because it's all lies," she screamed, completely losing composure. "She seduced him. She's an opportunist, a gold digger." "But you don't have proof of this, do you?" the reporter insisted. "And isn't it true that you tried to sell false information to columnists for business revenge?" Amanda turned red, realizing she had fallen into a trap. The cameras caught her expression of hatred and frustration, broadcasting live across America. On the other side of the street, Isabella watched the scene with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity because Amanda was publicly destroying herself out of pure spite. Relief because finally the truth was being exposed for everyone to see. "Ready to go in?" David appeared at her side, impeccable in a Hugo Boss tuxedo. "More than ready," she smiled, interlacing her arm with his. The entrance to the church was emotional. The nave was packed not just with the business elite, but with people from all social levels. In the front row on the bride's side sat company employees, cleaners, security guards, receptionists, all dressed in their best clothes, proud to witness the wedding of the woman who had changed their lives. On the groom's side, his parents, the retired construction worker and former housekeeper, cried emotionally. They had reconciled with David after discovering how he had changed, and now completely approved of their son's choice. When the music began, Isabella walked alone down the center aisle. She had chosen not to have anyone give her away, because no man would deliver her to another. She was there by her own choice, as an independent woman who had decided to share her life. Each step was a declaration of victory. Victory over the tragedy that almost destroyed her. Victory over years of humiliation and invisibility. Victory over social prejudices that tried to define her worth based on uniform and position. When she reached the altar, David was visibly moved. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You too," she replied, lovingly adjusting his tie. Father Francis, from the parish where Isabella had confessed during the difficult years, conducted the ceremony with words that touched hearts. He had known Isabella in her darkest moments, and now celebrated her complete resurrection. "David and Isabella," he said, "you teach us that transformation is possible, that people can recognize mistakes, change behaviors, and find redemption through true love." When the moment for vows came, David went first. "Isabella, when I met you, I was an arrogant man who judged people by what they wore, not who they were. You taught me that true worth is in character, dignity, the way we treat those who cannot repay us." His voice began to fail with emotion. "You taught me that true power is in elevating others, not humiliating them. That true wealth is in genuine relationships or not bank accounts." He breathed deeply. "I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your love. I promise never again to judge anyone by appearance. I promise to use my position to make a difference in the lives of people who need it." The church was in absolute silence, many with tears in their eyes. Isabella's turn came. "David, when we met, You saw me as invisible. For 4 years, I was just the cleaning lady to you. But I discovered that sometimes we need to be broken, to be rebuilt stronger. She looked directly into his eyes. You humiliated me, disrespected me, made me feel small. But when you recognized your mistakes, when you decided to truly change, you showed that people can transform. Tears began to stream down her face. You taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but means giving a chance for real change. That true love is born from mutual respect, not convenience. She held his hand. I promise to continue being your partner in transformation. I promise never to let you go back to who you were. I promise to build with you a relationship based on equality, respect, and true love. When the priest pronounced, "You may kiss," the church exploded in applause. But these weren't just celebratory applause. They were applause of justice, proof that happy endings are possible in real life. Leaving the church, the couple was greeted by a shower of rose petals and shouts of support. Television cameras captured every moment, broadcasting live a story that inspired millions. Amanda Peterson and her protesters had disappeared, embarrassed by the public demonstration that they were completely wrong. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Mitchell?" a reporter asked Isabella. "I feel like Isabella Torres Mitchell," she corrected with a smile. A woman who never forgot where she came from, but who now knows where she's going. 2 years after the wedding, Isabella was on stage at the Jacob K. Javits Convention Center before an audience of 2,000 business people, lecturing on organizational transformation through genuine human relations. She wore an elegant navy blue suit and held a microphone with the confidence of someone who had found their true calling. "How many of you know the name of the person who cleans your office?" she asked the audience. Few hands were raised. "How many know if this person has children, dreams, educational background?" Even fewer hands. "And how many have ever stopped to think that maybe this person is more qualified than you imagine?" The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Isabella had become one of the most sought-after speakers in the country, hired by multinationals to talk about diversity, inclusion, and human valorization. 4 years ago, I was that invisible person, she continued. I cleaned bathrooms, emptied trash cans, and was treated like an object. Today, I'm CEO of the Isabella Torres Foundation, which has already trained over 8,000 people in vulnerable situations. The foundation had been created a year after the wedding, initially financed with David's resources, but quickly expanded with partnerships and donations. It offered professional courses, scholarships, and mainly dignity for those society had forgotten. The transformation that happened in my husband's company, she continued, can happen anywhere. You just need to see employees as human beings, not disposable resources. From the back of the auditorium, David watched proudly. In 2 years of marriage, he had seen his wife transform into an inspirational leader who impacted tens of thousands of lives. His company had also changed radically. Mitchell & Associates had become a national reference in humanized management, with employee satisfaction rates that impressed international consultants. Turnover had fallen to less than 3% per year. Productivity had increased 60%, and the company appeared annually on the list of best companies to work for. Mr. Mitchell, a journalist from Forbes magazine, approached him after the lecture. "How do you explain your company's extraordinary success in recent years?" "Simple," David replied. "I learned that when you treat people with genuine dignity, they give their best. When you invest in employee well-being, they invest in company success." "And personally, how's the marriage?" David smiled. "Couldn't be better. Isabella teaches me something new every day about being a better human being." That night, at home, a duplex penthouse in Soho, elegant but welcoming, the couple dined on the terrace overlooking the city. It was a sacred ritual. Every day at 8 p.m., They turned off phones and computers to talk about the day. "How was the lecture?" David asked, serving wine, moving. There was a businesswoman in the audience who cried when I told about my time as a cleaning lady. Later she approached me and said she's going to implement a valorization program at her company. Another life transformed by Isabella Torres Mitchell. More lives transformed by both of us, she corrected. Without your change, none of this would be possible. That's when the phone rang. It was Marina, Isabella's sister, calling from Miami with tears in her voice. "Isabella, you need to see the news. Amanda Peterson was arrested." "Arrested? Why?" "Large-scale business fraud. The FBI discovered she'd been embezzling public money for years. Investigators said her obsession with destroying you two made her commit errors that led to discovering the crime." Isabella hung up and told David. The news was shocking, but also brought a feeling of delayed justice. "She destroyed herself," David observed. "Hatred consumed her from within. I feel sorry for her," Isabella said sincerely. "She wasted years of her life trying to destroy our happiness instead of building her own." "Do you always have compassion, even for enemies?" David smiled, kissing his wife's forehead. "Because I learned that holding grudges hurts the one who holds them more than the target." The next morning, Isabella was at the Foundation headquarters, a 4-story building in downtown Manhattan, completely renovated and equipped. 20 employees worked on different programs: professional training courses, adult literacy, psychological support for people in vulnerable situations. Isabella called Robert Silva, not the deceased husband, but a 24-year-old young man who had been the Foundation's first beneficiary. Former homeless, he now coordinated the professional insertion program. "What is it, Robert?" Joan made it. She passed the entrance exam for law at NYU. Joan Santos, not the former HR manager, but a 47-year-old woman who had been a cleaning lady for 25 years, was one of the education program students. With a full scholarship earned through the Foundation, said she would fulfill her dream of becoming a lawyer. "Where is she?" Isabella asked emotionally. "In the study room, crying with joy." Isabella found Joan surrounded by other students, all celebrating the collective victory. This is what moved her most, seeing people society had discarded, discovering their potential. "Dr. Isabella," Joan hugged her, crying. "Thank you for showing me it's never too late to start over." "You earned this alone," Isabella replied. "I just offered the tools. But without the Foundation, I would never have believed it was possible." During lunch, David appeared at the Foundation with special news. "Love, I need to tell you something," he said with a mysterious smile. "The Gates Foundation wants to finance our Foundation's expansion throughout Latin America. $65 million for the next 5 years. Isabella was speechless. It was enough money to impact hundreds of thousands of lives. "How did you get this?" "I didn't get it. You did. They saw your lectures, studied the Foundation's results, and decided to bet on the project." That afternoon, walking through Central Park, the couple planned the future. "With this money, we can open branches in 15 countries, Isabella said excitedly. "Imagine how many people we'll be able to help. And you'll be able to give lectures worldwide," David added. "Spread this message of transformation." "We will be able to," she corrected again. "Without your support, none of this would be possible." They stopped at a bridge over the lake, watching families picnicking, children playing, couples dating. It was a moment of absolute peace. "David," Isabella said suddenly, "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone." "What?" "In the first months after the accident, I thought about giving up on everything. The pain was so much, the loneliness was so much, that several times I thought it would be easier not to be here." David hugged her, feeling the weight of the confession. "What made you change your mind?" "Faith," she smiled. "Not necessarily religious faith, but faith that there's a greater purpose to our existence, that our struggles have meaning, that there's a force in the universe that guides us to where we need to be." "And what's your purpose?" "To prove that every person has inherent value, that no one deserves to be invisible." That transformation is always possible when there's genuine love involved. They stayed silent for several minutes, absorbing the depth of the moment. "You know what impresses me most about you?" David said finally. "What? You transformed the worst phase of your life into the best cause of your life. And you taught me that there's something greater than us operating in the world." When they returned home that night, they found a surprise in the living room. Marina had arrived from Miami with a 9-year-old child, Lucas, son of a cousin who had died in an accident. "Isabella," Marina explained with tears in her eyes. "The adoptive parents gave up on him, said he's too difficult. He has no one else." Isabella knelt in front of the boy, who looked at her with sad and distrustful eyes. "Hi, Lucas. I'm Isabella. Want to stay with us for a while?" The boy nodded timidly. 4 months later, the adoption papers were ready. Lucas had adapted completely to his new life. He attended a private school, had therapy to overcome abandonment trauma, and most importantly, felt loved. "Mom, Isabella," he said one night, using for the first time the word she had dreamed of hearing. "Thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for choosing us too," she replied, hugging her heart's son. On the eve of their 3rd wedding anniversary, Isabella and David were in the same ballroom where it all began, now transformed into the Foundation's main space. 400 people participated in a charity party that would raise funds for new scholarships. 3 years ago, Isabella said into the microphone, "I broke crystal glasses in this ballroom and was publicly humiliated. Today, this same place is where we offer opportunities for people to rebuild their lives." The audience, composed of business people, former Foundation students, employees, and friends, applauded emotionally. "My husband taught me that people can change. I learned that places can also be transformed. This ballroom is no longer a symbol of humiliation, but of hope." David came on stage and hugged her. 3 years ago, I made the stupidest bet of my life," he said. "I bet that a cleaning lady didn't know how to dance. I lost $65,000, but gained much more. I gained a wife, a family, a new life perspective." He looked directly at her. "Isabella, you taught me that true success isn't measured in money, but in transformed lives. That true power isn't in humiliating, but in elevating, and that there's a greater force in the universe that puts us exactly where we need to be, at the right moment, to learn the lessons our soul needs." The party ended with a special presentation. Isabella and David dancing tango in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by friends, family, and people whose lives had been touched by their story. It was the same song from 3 years ago, Por una cabeza, but now it wasn't a demonstration of competence or revenge. It was a celebration of love, redemption, and second chances. When the music ended, Lucas ran to hug his parents, and the audience exploded in applause that echoed through the night. "Happy anniversary, love," David whispered in Isabella's ear. "Happy new life," she replied, kissing him gently. Outside, New York City sparkled under the stars, a city full of stories of struggle, overcoming, and transformation. And somewhere in this metropolis, a new Isabella was beginning her journey. A new person was discovering their strength. A new happy ending was being written. This isn't just a story of revenge or romance. It's a story about the transformative power that exists within each of us when we decide to see beyond appearances, when we choose to elevate instead of humiliate, when we opt for compassion instead of judgment. How many Isabellas pass invisibly through your life every day? How many wasted talents are hidden behind work uniform? How many stories of overcoming have you never known because you never asked? The true miracle of this story wasn't the dance that surprised everyone. It was the transformation of hearts hardened by prejudice. It was the discovery that there's a greater force, call it God, universe, destiny, or love, that orchestrates impossible encounters to teach us fundamental lessons about our humanity. The question that remains is, will you continue being the David from the beginning of the story, judging people by appearance and social position? Or will you choose to become the man he became, someone who uses their power to elevate others? Because in the end, we all dance the tango of life, and the music only becomes truly beautiful when we dance together, with respect, dignity, and genuine love. The choice is yours. The music is playing. May your life be a dance of transformation that inspires others to also find their inner strength and the greater purpose that awaits them.